Hi, I'm CJ and this is my RC channel. Okay, the final step for bag number one is to mount these two brackets, which are the diff mount brackets for the rear. They require more than the two screws that are provided, but that's a later step. So you're going to put the two screws here and here. Okay, we are on, let's see, step 10, and there were two bags marked 2A, and that's all these parts here and a few other items, like what I have in my hand. Okay, for example, this piece right here, this has the pinion on one side and the drive shaft on the other, and this can be mounted either right side up or upside down, giving you a high or low position. Now you'll also notice that there is a medium high and medium low. If you look at these pieces, there are two pair for the rear, and you use one pair or the other. And if as you can see, it's a conical shape, and then you've got the round hole here. So this would be high, and flipping it upside down, it's low. And in the instructions, you have the option for mid-low and mid-high. You cannot do that from the stock kit because you only have this one piece here. You don't have a second aluminum block that gives you those two mid positions. So the default setup is for high, so that means it'll be mounted like this with the shaft in the high position, and you will have to use this pair, the high-low pair, in the high position to get the right gear meshing. So I've used one of the little bags to save the pair of mid-high, mid-low. The race setup that I'm building to uses mid-high versus high. So I will look into getting another one of these pieces, and I'll probably need the same for the front. I haven't checked on the spec to see if that uses a mid position for the front versus the rear. In any event, the default setup is high, so I'll go ahead and run the default for this particular part of the setup. So these pieces will basically come in either from this side or from the outside. I'm not sure which. I'll get to that. Right now I need to put this piece together. So we have the pinion gear here, and there's a small washer. That is the 8 by 11 by 0.2. Now they say that when this gets run in, you need to run the car for an hour to wear in the gears for the diff and get everything to kind of seat itself, and there's a certain amount of wear involved. Once that is done, you can set the right amount of lash, as it's referred to, by getting more of these washers, but 0.1 millimeter thickness. So those are some really thin washers, and you add or remove washers as needed to get the right amount of lash. And we'll go into that later, exactly what that is and how you set that up. So the washer, then the bearing, it passes through this aluminum block like so. A second. Had that in a minute ago and now I'm having trouble. Okay, there, just didn't have it drop straight in. Okay, and then we have a forward-facing bearing, because remember, this is going to mount like this with the pinion gear facing rear into the differential. It's going to mount here between these two bracket arms. Now we have to put on the the drive shaft coupler here, or the out drive, and as you can see, this has a flat spot right there. So you're going to put this on facing the flat spot and screw in the large grub screw. Let's see what size that is. Okay, good. Nice thing about Serpent kits over some other kits, most manufacturers use metric hardware throughout. I used to build a lot of team associated cars back in the day. I started with the original RC10 Gold Pan, and they always used a mix of hardware. I think toward recently they've started making some of their kits with all metric, but they seem to be having problems. They're doing a lot more almost ready to run cars, and they dropped their Formula One car. Supposedly it was a pretty good chassis and a decent car. It had some good wins on the world stage, and they canceled production. They don't make it anymore. I think it was only in production about 3 or 4 years. Anyway, you know, too bad about that. But so tightening that down, and there's also an O-ring that is going to go in here, just like the ones that go in here in the center drive. Those are just basically going to be like little pads for the central drive shafts. So I'm just going to tuck that in over here so that when I get to the drive shafts, I know where those O-rings are. So let's see, we need 2 screws from above and 2 from below to anchor this in place. Let's see if it's easier to come in this way. Yeah, it's the suspension bracket here is a little taller. It's easier to slide this in from the rear and get that into position. At least that was my experience. So I need a pair of M310s and a pair of M320s. The 20s go in from below. Here are our 10s, and here are our 20s. So I'm going to go ahead and start the ones from above. And I'm just going to have them be a little loose as I get all of them started. And then once I've got all 4 in place, I'll do a final tightening on them, because it's hard to see, you know, what's going on here, because you can't see down into the hole to whether the things are aligned properly. So again, I'm just gonna keep that loose. And remember, you don't have the forward bolts here yet either, so this all is a little bit loose. Now this setup that I'm building to is a professional racer's setup, and it was done on a setup for a pavement track, and I run on asphalt on pavement, so I am building to that basic build as my initial default build. Now I'm snugging these down, but I'm not torquing them down tight yet. Because these aren't screwed in here, I want things to be able to move a little bit if necessary. The rear sway bar is one of the items that gets switched out. The stock sway bar is 2.7, and the setup I'm building to uses a 2.2 millimeter, so a softer rear sway bar. So onward to step 11. And step 11 is going to involve the sway bar, the differential, and then actually hooking up the sway bar. And again, the default setup is the high. As you can see here, these are the pieces I talked about. These are the two pieces that they give you to get the mid, low, and high. Those, again, I put in a bag. The aluminum piece that is necessary for mounting the pinion is not included in the kit. That's going to be a separate item that will have to be ordered, and I will probably order that. Again, I'm going to kind of go through this, and during the build I'm identifying pieces that I need to order that weren't included. So let's see, we need these two aluminum pieces here, and they have a they're mirror to each other, so you need to make sure that you have them facing the correct direction. There's a little cutaway here, and those face each other, so that's the correct orientation, not like this. Okay, and there's going to be a bearing that comes into play here as well. So let's see how this comes together. Okay, so we're going to take this bearing, and the bearing has a ridge on it. It's not just a smooth top, it's got a step in it, and that is going to go with the step facing out. So that will drop in like that, and I'm just going to tap it in. It's in place. It's not a tight fit. And likewise for the other side. Okay, so we need to take these pieces. There's a pair of them, and they also have a little cutaway in them. And those are going to slide on to our, I'll just do one at a time, onto the sway bar. And as you can see, they also have a hole for a grub screw that is going to anchor the sway bar. So that that's why that notch is there on this aluminum piece, so you can access that, is what I would believe. And so that slides in like that. And let's get the second one going. At this point, I'm not going to try to get them directly into place because I'll need to do that anyway. Let's see how these attach here. Okay, that makes sense. So I'm just going to set that down like that. I'm going to get my rear diff, which is the, I'm just going to confirm that again. Go back to our diff section. And what I'm looking for is which one takes the heavier oil. I'm going to take a look at the setup, both stock and modified. I'm going to pause for a second. Okay, the smaller number, the 80,000, goes in the rear, and the 1 million, which is the 1000K, goes in the front. So I need the 800. Now this is not consistent with the build that I'm striving to achieve, or that I'm copying from. The build that I'm going for has a 150 million in the front and 30,000 in the rear. So a much stiffer rear end, and even looser front. I do not have that weight at this time. I am ordering it, so I will be rebuilding these diffs down the road when I get that in and play with that. I'm going to just break everything in with the stock setup as far as the greases and kind of get the feel of that, and then when I switch those greases out, I'll immediately notice the difference of the new one, but the gears will already be run in. So again, high position, and these face inward with the notch to the inside. So these just slide in over the bearing like that, and they drop in here. To exactly get that in place, I'm not sure, having never built this before. And this is my first eighth scale and my first Serpent, so I'm not familiar with a lot of their build techniques. Now, I'm not like prying on anything heavy here, I'm just pushing against that little notch. I am thinking that this might be easier to unbolt those two bolts back here that hold that bracket on. And assemble that off the car, off the chassis. Because right now the brackets are held together by that pinion bracket. So I'm going to go ahead and pull this out all together and just kind of take a look inside at these pieces here. Okay. So I don't see any flashing or anything that would otherwise prevent these from snapping in. I'm sure once they've been used a bit, they go together easier. I have another idea. I'm going to go ahead and remove the upper and lower screw on one side here, so I can basically split this bracket back into two pieces. And then I will sandwich the diff with the two pieces and reattach these. So I will take, and I should pull this tape off now since it's no longer needed. Okay, so that piece needs to go in upright. just screw in with the M4x20s. Okay. So I'm just using one of these sway bar mounts to hold this in place, because it kind of it keys in like that. So by holding that like this with my thumb and forefingers, I can position this piece here, get that vertical. Again, I'm sure somebody knows a better way of doing this. Please tell me, because this is supposed to be an easy access differential. There we go. There. Nice, happy snapping sound. So those are both in the vertical position, in the high position. So that's what I wanted. And now I can put these two screws back in place. Again, I'm not going to super tighten them until everything else is attached. Okay, that's in place there. Okay, so now I'm going to basically flip this over while holding those pieces in place. And get these 4 screws started. Again, just getting them close, but not tight. That's gonna, let me get these started. I'm gonna drop this whole assembly. May need to snug these down a little bit more, and this one over here. Okay, having a little trouble there. This, oops. Okay, what's going on is that this plastic piece on this side is not completely aligned. I have to see if I can push that up a little bit. Might just do it. Yep, that got it started. You don't want to force the threads. What I ended up doing was getting the bottom part in place and then pressing here and here to close that gap there, and got that little snap going, that plastic piece locked in, and all set. So now it's time to adjust these sway bar bearings, and while these are out, I'm going to go ahead and start the grub screws. Now what I'm doing is I'm starting the grub screw, and then I'm sliding the bearing and the lock for the bearing into place with the grub screw still captured by the wrench and into the slot here, so I can apply a little side pressure and lock that bearing in place by tightening this down against the sway bar. And now I need to kind of match this up. Now I will adjust those again in a moment. Right now, I wanted to get these pieces in place. And now we need the last two grub screws. Those are going to go in here. I'm going to set that up so that the sway bar is right at the end of the ball joint. I've basically got my fingernail against it right there. Now you want these to be identical as far as how far this captures the sway bar. If one is further than the other, you're going to have an imbalance in the sway bar because one will have more leverage than the other. So something to take into account. You want to make sure that they are the same. In theory, you could make adjustments to the sway bar. In other words, you could make it a little, it's already has adjustability in for how thick it is around the spring metal, but you could make subtle adjustments by moving this in a little bit or out a little bit. As long as the grub screw is still capturing and as long as they're equal, you could give a little more leverage or a little less leverage and thus make it a little looser or a little tighter. So now what we want to do is we want to make sure that the sway bar is centered. Get this into the light a little better. So that looks like it is right in the middle. So I'm going to go find that grub screw. Okay, got it. Loosen it up. Hold this in what I believe to be the center. Move it to the outside and tighten. Okay, and we need to do the same thing on this side. Need to get the grub screw. Loosen it up. Now hold this as far to that side while snugging this one. Okay, and now the sway bar is properly captured. It neither goes left nor right. There's no jiggling at all. And it acts equally on one as the other. So if we hold one and move the other, we can see the sway bar flexing. Perfect. It's just what we want. Okay, so we've got 11.1.2, and now it's on to 12.1 and 2. So here we have a couple of brackets and some plastic pieces. These obviously key in here. You can see this square end here and here. For some reason they offer this piece here, these two, in alloy. I don't know why anyone would bother with that, but especially since the piece that they connect to is, I may actually be thinking of another kit that I saw a similar part for. Anyway, these are going to leave our rear shock tower. This is not a very good diagram. Okay, it looks like, okay, these pieces key like this, okay, and they're gonna be in here, and then we have like that, and then we will put 4 bolts through. Two are long and 2 are shorter. The longer ones are going to go through the top holes. Sorry. That's kind of hard to, I wonder if those need to thread through? No, they don't. Okay, I'm going to start by getting one of these pushed in. Okay. And the second one started. Okay, I think I'm going to do a little trimming on this piece. It seems like it's a little long at the bottom edge. Let me see if I can show you. This should be able to go flush here, and it seems like it's fighting it down here at that bottom front edge. So I'm going to go ahead, pull these two screws, and I'm going to trim a little bit of plastic off the bottom. And see if I can't, yeah, it looks like there's some molding on the bottom there. That may be what's blocking it. Let's try starting that this time. It's close, but it's still very tight. It's going to be hard to get it through the carbon as well. Just cleaning that that corner right there a little bit. Okay, that's going to go through. I'll do a little more. Just want to make sure that's, yeah, that passes through nice and smooth. Okay, I'm not going to tighten that yet, but I got it through. So this piece, I'm going to do the same thing. If you can see, there's a little bit of there's like a molding tab down here, and that's the main impediment. And then this corner here is a little bit of a rounded 90, whereas the aluminum is a nice sharper 90. So I'm going to just cut a little bit of that corner smooth. There we go. Again, I'm going to leave that a little loose. I'm going to get my two top bolts into position. Those just go through the plastic, not the aluminum bracket on that side, so they just attach here on the front side. I'm incorrect. I put the wrong bolts in. Should have been the long ones in the bottom. But it's not going to change anything as far as those fit issues. There we go. I'll just switch these out one at a time. I'm just gonna stop for now, instead of you watching me, drive these screws in. Okay, so we're at a stage where we've got a ring and pinion and a differential, and everything rotates nice and smooth. We've got A-arms and we've got a sway bar in place. So I'm just gonna go along the bottom here and give these a last tighten. Everything is good. Okay. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please click like and please subscribe to my channel.